Good morning, Mr. Selega. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Chairperson.
Mr. Masuk, had you completed your discussion with your client, or did you wish to have some
No,
time?
we have completed.
Okay,
We've completed.
okay,
Thank
all
you.
right. Good morning, Mr. Molefe.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
It looks like the technicians have done something to make sure nobody complains that they can't hear me. So,
Yeah.
okay, all right. The oath you took yesterday, Mr. Molefe, will continue to apply today.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay.
Just before resumption, this morning, Chairperson, my learned friend from Mr. Molefe had a discussion with me, which we brought to your attention in chambers. It relates to the statement of Mr. Clinton Ephron, which is in the Tigeta reference bundle, Eskom bundle 18, on page 352. The point being raised is that this statement is not under oath. I should, however, confirm that it is signed by Mr. Ephron, but it's not under oath. My learned friend was concerned that whereas his client is testifying under oath and is given an affidavit, he might be found to perjure himself if he doesn't tell the truth, whereas Mr. Ephron, who simply submits a statement not under oath, a similar fine or same finding can be made against him. So we have given my learned friend the undertaking that we will ask Mr. Ephron to resubmit the statement under oath.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Sorry, I think the extent of my understanding is that it's not just a submission of a statement under oath, but that he might come and testify, in which case we would consider whether or not to cross-examine him on what his statement under oath contains.
Okay, no, that's fine. Basically, you'd also exercise whatever options you might have.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Chair. To you.
Yes, Chairperson. Yesterday, as I was giving evidence, I said that Mr. Ramaphosa had been chairman of Optimum. And my reference was a magazine article.
Yes, just raise your voice a bit.
My reference was a magazine article in
Yes.
my footnotes.
Yes.
And Mr. Siliga pointed out that Mr. Ephron disputes this and says that Mr. Ramaphosa was never chairman of Optimum.
Yes.
But last night I was able to print a SENS announcement from Optimum, which is a JSE announcement when listed companies make changes. And it lists Mr. Ramaphosa as being appointed as a non-executive director and chairman of the company, Optimum. This is dated the 26th of March, 2017.
2017
The 26th of March, 2012.
or 12?
12,
Okay.
yes. And the following day, 3 other publications ran with the announcement over and above the one that I quoted yesterday, which was Independent Online, Engineering News, and Mining MX. So, in my opinion, I think that there is sufficient evidence to show that Mr. Ramaphosa was indeed chairman. It is just convenient that Mr. Clinton Ephron did not say what he was saying under oath. In fact, I note that even his first statement to the commission was not under oath, which is very strange. His statement was not under oath. He did not make an affidavit.
Mr. Ephron.
Ephron, yes, Optimum. Optimum never made an affidavit to this commission. They just gave evidence.
I'm not aware. Well, Mr. Slega, you didn't lead Mr. Efron's evidence, but you would have read his earlier statement.
I have indeed read it.
Well, your junior could check.
Yes, it is a statement, I can confirm that.
Yes.
But I know he was called, I don't know whether he testified in person or...
He did testify in person.
Yes.
Yeah, but the statement that he submitted was
not under oath.
Was not an affidavit.
Yes. Okay, what your junior could check while we are continuing, I would imagine that if his statement was not under oath, I would have imagined that when he started his evidence, he would have been asked to confirm under oath that what was in his statement was true and correct. So that if he said that, that would take care of that statement.
Yes.
But if he didn't confirm it, then it wouldn't be curing that. But your junior can check for us, and in due course, maybe I
Yes,
can
sir.
be told what the position is.
Yes.
But certainly in regard to the most recent one, you have indicated that you will ask him to,
Yes,
he will be asked to resubmit it under oath.
correct. Chair.
Yeah, and I think that, Mr. Molefe, the publications to which you have just referred, those could be submitted to the legal team, and ultimately, they'll come to you. Mr. Selegas Jr. will come to you and take those. So there will be evidence. So at a certain stage, then they should be submitted as exhibits at some stage.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
all right.
Chairperson, similarly, the opening statement of Mr. Molefe, which he read from last time on his appearance, should also be admitted as an exhibit.
Yes.
I
If it wasn't done last time, it must still be done.
Yeah, I don't think it was because he needed to make corrections on it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was speaking to my learned friend so that we can get the corrected
The version.
version of that.
Yeah.
The corrected version was submitted the following day.
Oh, my learned friend was saying they haven't.
No.
So the instructing attorney may well have sent it to the commission. I didn't know that, but.
Yeah, the Malaba attorneys.
Okay, can we just say, can Mr. Molefe's instructing attorneys just electronically send it to the legal team?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Thank you, Chair. What I'm going to do during the course of the evidence, I'll make a copy of depending on when we get it, because I want to go through Mr. Molefe's statement
Yeah,
during the
okay.
course.
Yeah, that's all right.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Molefe, let's proceed. When we ended yesterday, I went to listen to the recording. You were talking about the president being the chairperson of the war room, and that they required too much details in the war room. There were two aspects. There was the cooling off period, a lot of details required, and
I'm sorry, Mr. Solega. Wasn't there something you wanted to also inform me about with regard to
yes.
the president?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. That is in relation to Mr. Molefe's statement. As the chairperson had directed, we provided the presidents with your statement, Mr. Molefe, together with your affidavits. The chairperson, then you asked me yesterday whether Mr. President has responded. I did not know at that stage, but now I know that he actually hasn't. I got a message from his office that they have decided to wait until Mr. Molefe has fully testified in order to file a written response or affidavit to him. So that's the position. We haven't received anything from the President yet.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
all right.
But, Chairperson, if it was a 3.3, were they not required to say, even before I testify, whether they will like to cross-examine or is it done after I have testified?
Well, the rules of the commission are to the effect that if you have been served with a Rule 33 notice to say somebody has submitted a statement or affidavit that implicates you or may implicate you, you have certain rights which you must decide whether you exercise them or not, one of which is whether you are going to apply for leave to cross-examine that person. You must do that within 14 days after receiving the 3.3 notice, but there is provision for condonation if you are late and you provide an explanation why you were late. And then the chairperson can condone or not condone after hearing what the explanation is. But it's not, you are not obliged by virtue of receiving a Rule 3.3 notice. What you are obliged, the time when you are obliged to file an affidavit is when you receive a Regulation 10.6 directive from the chairperson.
Yes.
So under Rule 3.3, it's up to you if you want to respond. But the commission may decide that even if you didn't want to respond, it wants an affidavit from you. In that case, it can ask you to provide an affidavit. If you cooperate and respond and provide it, then no 10.6 directive needs to be issued. If you don't provide it, then you can be compelled. But at this stage, it's a 3.3 notice situation.
So will it be correct to say that in terms of the Rule 3.3, I don't know what they call it, DS, the days, which is 14 days.
For 14 days.
Those have lapsed because
Yes.
it was the 15th of
Yes.
15th of January.
Yes.
So they have to apply for condonation
If you,
if they decide.
if they decide, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Selega?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to recap, and you will assist me, Mr. Molefe, yesterday about the war room and the President being the chairperson of the war room. I think one of the aspects you raised was that you were, and I'm paraphrasing, either surprised by the amount of detailed information that they required. Is that correct? But they required a lot of detail.
Yes.
And you didn't know why they required so much detail. Did you or did you not?
Did I what?
Did you know why they required that much detail?
No.
Did you seek to engage to find out why they required so much detail?
No, the amount of detail that was required was in fact not even my evidence here. There are people who came here that talked about the war room, that spoke about a lot of detail being required all the time. I think one of them may have been Ms. Matietsi Mokolo, and one or two other people from the board who were talking about the war room and the fact that they were not being told what's happening at the war room. They are the people that talked about detail. I did attend once, and I made a presentation where the president was present. about our strategy to eliminate load shedding. And that was a very detailed presentation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's important to know because you see, yesterday when you testified, it sounded like this is information that you knew firsthand about, but they wanted so much details. So we went away yesterday after the adjournment with the impression that this you knew yourself, that is what was being required. But I think it's important now that you're clarifying. In fact, you are simply relying on what you heard other witnesses testify.
And I did go to a meeting where we made a presentation that was very detailed on our strategy to eliminate load shedding.
Yes, but that's one thing because you're not complaining
No,
about
that was a typical detail that was required.
Well, I don't know whether we should bother about details until somebody says the amount of detail they required means X, Y, Z.
Yes, Chair.
Or this is the conclusion to be drawn from that. So otherwise, if Mr. Molefe simply says I was surprised by the amount of detail they wanted and doesn't go beyond that, I'm not sure that we need to spend more time on it.
But the point is this, Chairperson, whereas Mr. Molefe appears to be complaining about the details required, Minister Lynn Brown says in her affidavit that she met with President Zuma, who was raising concerns with her that the executives were not supplying sufficient or accurate information to the war room. So it was according to Minister Lynn Brown, a very specific complaint of President Zuma at the time. So what the war room then was doing in its request for information, it would have been in compliance with what the president then required as communicated by the minister, or at least to address that concern which the president had raised with the minister.
Well, to the extent that you are saying that the issue relates to whether there were justifications for any complaint about the adequacy or otherwise of the information provided to the war room, maybe there might be something.
Yeah.
But I just want us to make sure that we use the time that we have for important issues.
Yes.
But, Chairperson, my understanding is that I'm here to help the commission,
Yeah.
to assist the commission and the investigating team. If there is an interest in the amount of detail that was required and the amount of detail that was submitted, because there's been evidence here that meetings were held every Friday morning at 7 o'clock. And in those meetings, Eskom officials were required to submit reports. Perhaps the investigating team can go to Eskom and ask for those reports and the requests for information and see exactly what was in there, rather than to seek to ask of me to give evidence about those reports and what was in them and what was the amount of detail that was in there. The information is at Eskom.
Yeah, you see, one of the things we have got to, as a commission, guard against is following up everything
Yes,
when we have very limited time.
yes,
We've got to use our time optimally.
yes,
We mustn't waste time following things that whose relevance or importance is not clear. when there may be things that are clear.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying to Mr. Slegger, what is this about the amount of detail? So I'm wanting to be satisfied that we are spending time on important issues. If somebody demonstrates to me that for the commission to look for those reports, is important in terms of the terms of reference of the commission, in terms of what we're looking for, then by all means. But I must just be satisfied that we use our time that is left optimally. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
On the other hand, Chairperson,
Yes.
it might be interesting to find out if the issue of coal supply and Glencore did come up during those meetings.
Yeah.
That might be interesting for the commission.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it did.
Yes.
I'm just saying that this is what happened.
Yes.
And if you really, really want to get to the truth,
Yeah.
this is the route that you
Yeah.
can take. And it is up to you to decide whether it is important or relevant.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fine.
No, I don't make too much about the information itself that was required, Mr. Molefe. All I'm trying to show is that, you see, the war room had a mandate. The war room was faced with issues pertaining to Eskom, and the president had established it, put the deputy president there, and the president had raised concerns, according to the minister, that we must get information sufficient for the war room. So when the war room required information, as it did it on the mandate of the president. So I'm contrasting that with your complaint that they required a lot of details. Because I don't know what you make of that request, which is a request in compliance with the president at the time. And that's all I wanted to show you. Nothing more than that.
Mr. Seliga, during the existence of the war room, all they wanted was information. I can't recall that they did anything meaningful to stop load shedding from the information that was submitted on those Friday mornings. That is what frustrated me as an incoming chief executive, that we had a challenge which was load shedding. Load shedding required positive action and not just endless meetings where we just request information all the time. My feeling, and this was my evidence, my feeling was that the war room was just requesting information and it was not clear for what purpose and what it is that they're going to do with it. And I could not see specific, positive, decisive interventions that were being made to stop load shedding, which is why I went and just focused on load shedding until we got it right.
How long was the war room there? Do you remember? More or less?
I don't remember, but
A year, 2 years?
I can't remember. It started before I got there. But
Yeah.
while I was there, it was there for another 2 months or so.
Yeah.
Load shedding ended in August 2015. It was long after the whole room had been closed down.
Oh, okay.
And just to finalize on this, because you see in your opening statement, you did say you then stopped attending the meetings of the war room.
To go and focus on the issue at hand.
Yes. So the answer is yes. What I'm trying to say to you is this: look at the treatment you received vis-a-vis the suspended executives. Prior to their suspension, Minister Lynn Brown goes to the meeting of the board. And one of the issues is exactly that the executives are not giving sufficient information. It's an allegation. Not giving sufficient information to the war room, or inaccurate information has been given. And it's one of the issues she articulates as issues of her concern. Board members said she's not going to protect anybody anymore, and identifies areas of functions where the 4 executives have to step down. They get suspended. 3 never come back. But you stop attending the war room meetings, and you do so with complete impunity. So what makes this change of attitude towards you vis-a-vis people like Mr. Matona and the FD, Ms. Molefe, Mr. Denmarukan?
Maybe,
That's what, it's intriguing.
maybe they should have stopped attending the war room.
Maybe
But-
what?
Maybe they should have stopped attending the war room. But,
But they were being compelled to go, compelled to give information.
Chairperson, I do not think that I can comment on the suspension of the executive. I was not there, I was not involved. In fact, some of them I have never even met. And I sought deliberately not to involve myself in the issue of the suspended executive.
But can I explain my question to
I
you?
also
Let him finish.
would prefer not to compare my approach to their approach. I deliberately, when I got to Eskom, said that I would like to view this problem with a fresh eye, without the baggage of what had happened or had just happened. So the issue of the suspended executives did not feature at all in my strategy
Yeah.
to try and eliminate load shedding.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was my priority number one, eliminate load shedding. And that did not involve going back to what my predecessors did, the privileges they enjoyed or did not enjoy, or what the fights between them and the board had been. So I'm afraid, Chairperson, I cannot comment on the issue of the suspension of the executive.
Yes, but I was asking you to comment on a different aspect.
You were asking to?
For him to comment on a different aspect.
Uh-huh.
I'm saying the differences in the treatment that you receive and they receive is what calls for comment. You stop attending the meetings with impunity. Nothing happens to you. They are trying hard to assist the war room to give information. There's a complaint that, no, you're not giving us correct information. You're not giving us adequate information. You are giving us inaccurate information. And it's one of the minister's concern when she comes to the meeting on the 11th.
Yes.
Ultimately leads to their suspension. It's not the suspension you need to comment on. It's the differences in the treatment meted out to you and them.
Treatment by whom?
Yes.
Chairperson?
Treatment by whom?
Treatment meted out by the shareholder representative and the board.
Yes.
Yes.
Because it's the board and the minister.
But are you comparing the same things? Wouldn't you have to say, if you want to check whether the board and the minister treated them the same way they suspended executives and him, wouldn't you have to say, if you are comparing the fact that according to the knowledge of the minister and the board, they were accused of not giving correct information to the war room, or they were accused of sometimes giving conflicting information about, for example, the financial position of the company. I think that is one of the things that was mentioned.
Yes.
Wouldn't you have to say he did the same and he got different treatment? But I don't hear you saying he was accused of supplying incorrect information and so on. Wouldn't you need to be dealing with that situation in order to compare properly?
Yes, Chair, we don't, well, there is no, I hear what the chairperson is saying. There's no allegation in regard to, an allegation made either by the minister or the board to that effect. But at the level of inadequate information the executives were alleged to have provided, and this is an allegation because they have come here to deny those things. You see an effort at least from their evidence on their part, to cooperate with the war room. And it's at that level that I'm impeaching it. But then you hear Mr. Molefe saying, well, I stopped going to the war room. So it's only at that level that
Yes, but
I'm pitching it.
it's not the same. They didn't stop, he stopped.
Yes,
And there's no accusation that he provided the war room with incorrect information or
Yes.
conflicting information.
yes, no, correct, because isn't it that there are two aspects here? As the chair is saying, they didn't stop. But they were accused, amongst others, of not providing sufficient information. In the case of Mr. Molefe, when he stops to participate, that means he will not provide any information to the world. It's at that level.
Well, you can provide information without attending meetings.
Yeah, he will have to answer that, Chair.
Yes, but I'm not sure that it comes across the way you really want
Yeah.
it. I mean,
I see the chair has...
there is no. They were accused of providing incorrect information or conflicting information, or not providing adequate information. I can't
Yes,
remember
yes.
whether it was all of the above.
Yes.
There is no such accusation as that we know was leveled against him, but he says he stopped attending the war room.
Yes.
And also, from the board side, remember that from the board side, as far as the suspension of the executives are concerned, they have all made the point, those who have testified, that the suspension was not based on any wrongdoing on the part of the executives, but they wanted that the inquiry, once it started its work, they shouldn't be there because their presence could impede their inquiry. But what is true is that when the minister spoke to the board on the morning of the 11th of March 2015, she did, among other things, raise a complaint that the war room was being provided with either inadequate or incorrect or conflicting information by the management.
Okay, so I was taking just one aspect of that, Chair.
But
to test
also-
with,
Also,
test with Mr. Molefe.
Silic, if I may,
Yeah,
the treatment by the minister
yes,
would have been by the minister.
or the board.
Action or the board.
Yes.
Action or inaction by the minister or the board.
Yes,
I would not be in a position to speculate or to say why they acted or did not act.
yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Because we're looking at that against the background, Mr. Molefe, of what has been presented here as evidence before the commission, that essentially, the essence of the evidence is that you were earmarked to come to be placed at Eskom. At the essence of it, even before the minister's decision announced on the 17th of April 2015. So I'm putting that to you in the context of that information. So, but if you say you can't comment, that's fair enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, in
Let's-
effect, Mr. Molefe, the question is, do you know anything about you having been earmarked even prior to, is it prior to the secondment, Mr. Slega?
Prior to the secondment being announced on the 17th of April.
Or maybe you want to indicate more or less from when the earmarking is said to have happened.
Well, if we take it from
Obviously, before the announcement, at some stage,
correct, Chair,
a decision had been taken that he was the right person.
correct, Chair.
I don't know whether that's earmarking, but he would have been identified.
Yes. If we take it from,
By who?
if we take it from the evidence of Mr. Hank Bester,
Yeah.
who is told by Mr. Salim Essa in 2014.
You mean earmarked by Mr. Salim Essa?
No, I'm using the word to convey the message of the evidence.
Yes.
That we will show you how powerful we are. We have decided who's the next boss of Eskom.
Okay, I think you need to ask it directly, Mr. Selega.
Okay.
And I think last time it was raised, and I think Mr. Molefe didn't have any comments on it. It was raised that the evidence placed before the commission by, what is the name of the witness, Mr. Selega?
Hank Bester.
Mr. Hank Bester, is that he had a meeting at some stage in 2014 with Mr. Salim Essa
Yes.
in relation to some job that his company had obtained from Transnet, and Mr. Salim Essa wanted Mr. Hank.
Yes,
Mr.
he wanted Mr. Hank Bester.
Yeah, to agree that Mr. Essa's company
Yes.
be involved in that job. And he was resisting that approach, and he said, Mr. Salim Essa said to him something to the effect that we are, and it's a matter of speculation who we was referring to, are very powerful. I can tell you that we have already decided that the next boss of Eskom will be Mr. Brian Molefe. Is that correct, Mr. Selega?
That's the.
So you might say, I know nothing about that. You might say, I know about it. It's because they had talked to me and they said they think I would be the right person to take Eskom forward because there are challenges at Eskom, and I said I would have no problem. Or you might say, I know nothing about that. Mr. Salim Essa never spoke to me about that. Or, yeah,
I know nothing about it, Chair.
yeah,
Furthermore,
thank you.
I don't know Mr. Salim Essa,
Yes,
and I've never met him.
yes, yes,
I don't even know what he looks like.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mr. Molefe, let's go.
Maybe to complete it,
Yes,
you don't know Mr. Salim Essa. Is there anybody, whether in government or outside of government, who had spoken to you about their wish or desire for you to go and be Group CEO at Eskom?
As I said, it was the minister,
Yes,
and only the minister,
yes.
during a function at Nuha.
Was that 2014 or 2015? Because I'm talking about 2014.
Just before.
Sorry, just
Just before, maybe 10 days or so before.
before the
Before it
announcement.
happened, yes.
So that's
or
20
even less than that.
That's 2015
Yeah.
April.
So she simply said, we have a very serious problem at Eskom. They won't even be able to pay salaries. I'm concerned about what's going on there.
Yeah,
Would you agree
yes,
if we seconded you,
Yes.
Eskom, to just assist us
Yeah.
out of this crisis?
yeah,
And I said, Minister, if that is what yourself and the government would like to do, that is fine.
yeah. Yeah, you did testify about that last
Yes,
time.
and that is the only.
That's the only
conversation.
person, and
Yes,
it was
that's
not
the only-
2014, it was 2015.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Chair, can we just carry on that?
Yeah,
And-
yeah.
Because, but then you only stayed for a year there, Mr. Molefe, at
Come again?
Eskom.
You
You only stayed for a year at Eskom,
I stayed for a year.
or is it over
It was over a year.
to December 2016?
Yes.
Why?
Well, it was 1.5 years, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yes.
Why?
Well, firstly, the load shedding was under control, number one. And number two, while I was seconded to Eskom,
No, why did you stay only until December 2016?
come again?
Why did you only stay until December
But
2016?
I'm trying to explain.
Okay.
Yes, now explain, Mr. Molefe. Come closer to the mic or put it closer to you.
When I was appointed, it was on an understanding that it would be for permanent employment. So, which is a no fixed term of my contract. And we concluded so that was the agreement that we would like to employ you. You'll be employed as a group chief executive. And here in Eskom, the group chief executive is not on a fixed term contract. My fixed term contract at Transnet had actually been renewed for another 5 years at the time. And I agreed, we exchanged letters, and I was appointed. I believe that after I had been acting for 6 months, the board or the minister could make a decision to confirm me into the position. And that is what happened. Soon after I was appointed and received the letter and the contract, we got a message from the minister's office that says that, no, in fact, we wish to change your term to 5 years. And I said, but I've just signed a permanent employment contract. You're changing the terms of my employment. And there was an exchange, toing and froing between the chairman and the minister's office about that situation, because I was saying, no, I don't think this is fair because I'm permanently employed and now you're converting my employment contract to 5 years. Then the board came with a solution that says that, well, when you leave, we will regard you as having worked until the age of 63 or so.
You are swallowing some of your words. I don't think they
No,
appear
they
on the
said when you
transcript.
leave, you will have been regarded as having completed
As having worked up to age 60.
Yeah, at 60 retirement.
Yeah.
And in fact, they took a resolution to that effect, and then they prepared the 5-year contract, which I signed. And then in November 2016, Ms. Madonsela released her state of capture report, which I say I was not consulted about. Well, our version was not asked for. And which state of capture report I thought was very unfair and had a lot of things that I thought I could explain, but did not have the opportunity to explain. But I was nevertheless tainted. So I decided.
Sorry, you were nevertheless, or tainted? you said?
Tainted, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the media was going on and on about it, phone calls and so on and so forth. And so I decided that perhaps it is best to leave. Perhaps it is best to leave. And then when I had to leave, I had to choose the vehicle by which I leave. And then I activated that agreement that when I leave, I will be regarded as having been living at 63. So I applied for it. And the board approved it and put me on pension. So I left because I felt with these allegations, it's not good to be at Eskom.
It's not good?
To be at Eskom.
Yes, okay.
That is why I left.
So that, what was that?
Maybe before that, why would it not be good to remain at Eskom in that situation?
Chairperson, when you're the CEO and you're accused of corruption and all sorts of things, even when they have not been proved, how do you face your employees every day? Because they will think that this guy is our CEO, but there is a public protector report. So in the public protector report, it said that well, these allegations must be investigated. A commission of inquiry must be set up, and it must report within 18 months. So even when I left, I thought, okay, these allegations, we will deal with them. It will take about 18 months to deal with them. But those 18 months as CEO is anyway a greater part of my contract. Will not be worth staying at Eskom for or during that period. So I took early retirement as had been agreed with the board much earlier in February when there was a dispute about converting my permanent employment into 5 years. And that was offered as I don't know, as a sweetener to get me to sign a 5-year contract. So I did not consider it tenable. In any way, as I said in my statement, it is good governance to step away when you're being accused of the things that she was insinuating in her report.
Well, on a lighter note, I just want to say, the English language is rich with words. I just hear that you said step away. You didn't say step aside. And there is also step down, step away, step aside.
Yeah. I did not say it consciously with a.
Yeah.
Yeah. But taking retirement would mean that I don't return.
I'm sorry, just repeat that.
Going on early retirement would mean that I will not return.
Yes.
Yeah, that was early retirement.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that my understanding is correct, is the position that the arrangement that had been reached between yourself and the board in terms of your employment after the minister had said your appointment should be for 5 years, is the position that the board, is the position that when you left or when you would be leaving at the end of the 5 years, you were going to be deemed to have worked for Eskom until age 60 and therefore obtain benefits, pension benefits that you would have obtained or would have been entitled to if you had worked up to that age. Is that understanding correct?
Yes, it says when I left.
It says when you leave.
When I leave, yes.
Yes, and then, well, I don't know whether in the litigation there was any issue about whether when you leave meant when you leave at the, when you would leave at the end of 5 years or any time.
I can't remember how it was addressed by,
Yes,
by
but-
the lawyers in there.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is that when the time came, I wrote a letter that says I hereby apply for early retirement as per our earlier agreement and as per the rules of the pension fund. And that's the sum total of my letter.
Yeah.
And then I got a letter back that says your early retirement is approved.
Yeah.
The other technicalities. So my early retirement was approved, which was why I was adamant that I had actually never resigned. I never put in a resignation letter. I just said I would like to apply for early retirement. I was under the impression that it was possible to do so.
It was
Possible
Yeah.
to do so, to just apply for early retirement.
Yes. Yeah.
It was a time of great confusion because it was on the back of Lima Donsela's report. And I was feeling a lot of things, Chairperson. My permanent contract has been reduced to 5 years. And now here is a report from a Chapter 9 institution, which in my opinion violated the rules of natural justice and the Constitution itself. What do you do when a Chapter 9 institution violates your right to be heard? I felt very, very frustrated and angry at the whole thing. And then I said, you know what, I'm just going to take early retirement. They offered it to me anyway. And I applied for it, and it was approved.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Slay.
And after you took the early retirement, Mr. Molefe, because you say your name was tainted, it wasn't good to stay at Eskom anymore. Where did you go after that?
I went home.
And was there another job after that?
Yes, then I was later on, I think maybe a couple of months later, approached by the Northwest ANC,
How many months later?
about 2 or 3 months later.
2 or 3 months.
Yeah, around March, I think.
Yes.
Asking if I would be prepared to be a member of the National Legislature on the Northwest.
Yes, I must ask you again to speak up, Mr.
Yeah,
Molefe.
if I would
Your voice is going down more.
If I would be prepared to be a member of the National Assembly. They asked if I would be prepared to be a member of the National Assembly. And then I considered it, and I said I would be. That sounds like a good place to retire to just raise point of order and so on. So I agreed, and they facilitated that I become a member of the National Assembly for the Northwest Province.
So you, by virtue of that, you became a member of parliament.
Then I became a member of parliament.
Were you not similarly concerned about the report, the taint of your reputation, assuming that role?
No, it pertained to Eskom and my role as the chief executive of Eskom. So I saw it as, and I thought that we will deal with those issues at the right time in the commission and so on, which would be established within 18 months. But it would not be right to be at Eskom. So it pertained to Eskom. So my problem was not taking up any other employment. My problem was just at Eskom because the public protector's report was about Eskom.
Yeah. So for how long were you in that position at the National Assembly?
I think it was about 2 months.
Is it? And why 2 months?
So while I was at the National Assembly, Ms. Suzanne Daniels called and in fact came to see me in Parliament.
Came to see you in Parliament.
Yes. And she said,
Just to get the time frame correct, as I understand the position, you were sworn in as a member of Parliament in February 2017. Is that correct?
I can't remember if it was February or March, but thereabout.
But thereabout, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And came to see me and say that the minister is very concerned that
It's very
concerned,
yeah.
yeah, that the board gave you early retirement when you've only worked for 18 months. And the board,
18 months, you said?
yeah, about 18 months.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
And she would like to reverse that decision. And I said to her, how is she going to reverse the decision? Because the egg is scrambled.
I'm sorry, I think there is something.
Yeah, they're asking him to stay close to the microphone.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Is it possible to pull it closer or it's not movable?
No, I'll get through. I'll
Yeah,
get through.
okay.
I said, how is she going to reverse that decision? Because the egg is scrambled. How do you unscramble the scrambled egg? I've taken early retirement. It has been approved. It's approved at the pension fund. And now I'm here. So how do we reverse all of this? And she said, if it can be done, would you be amenable to doing it?
And the reversal that she was talking about, which she was saying the minister was talking about, was going to entail what, as you understood it when you were speaking to her?
That's what I was asking. What does that mean? How do we unscramble this egg? And then she went away and then came back again. We had meetings, lots of meetings in Cape Town and in Pretoria to talk about this. And eventually the proposal was, the legal opinion is that it was a mistake to approve my pension. In the first place, early retirement can only be taken when you're 55. I was 50. The board's advice had been that it's possible to take early retirement at 50. The reason that mistake happened is because it is in the rules of the pension fund that early retirement can only be taken at 55 with the approval of the board. But the pension fund guidelines, which is a guideline for members, says 50. The person who had given us advice, or given the board advice, had the guideline and was referring to the guideline and had said to the board at the time that, because at the time it was, well, if Mr. Molefe goes before he's 55, would you be able to implement this resolution that you have? And the answer was yes, anytime above 50 is possible. Yeah. So she says that was a mistake. It was a mistake to have approved your early retirement. And then I said, well, if it was a mistake to have approved my early retirement, it means I was also mistaken to have applied for it. Because if I had known that the rules don't allow for it, I wouldn't have applied it in the first place. But in my head, my mistake would have simply been fixed by officials who knew that it couldn't be done. They shouldn't have approved, but they did. But then I had applied for it. So we had labored under a common mistake that I could apply for early retirement and that the board could approve it. And we had done that and it had been done. And then she said the legal advice was, if a mistake is common to both parties, the legal solution is to revert to status quo ante, which means revert to what the situation was before the mistake happened. Which means, Mr. Molefe,
I'm sorry to interrupt the
Yes.
witness. My instructing attorney informs me that the issue of the pension is before the is still before the court.
Is
Is
before?
it a matter pending before the court? And Mr. Molefe is referring to legal opinions for which there has been no waiver of confidentiality. To the extent that the commission may take note of that, we would want to advise our client on the rights he has to speak about a matter that is pending before the court and what the implications are for indicating that there are legal opinions relating to the pension for which he is talking about. Can we have 5 minutes or 10 minutes to just speak to him so that we were all on one page in relation to the evidence he seeks to give?
No, I think that's fine, Mr. Selega. We could use this as a tea break. We are close to the tea break.
Indeed, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, let's take this as a tea break. It's 9 minutes past. We will resume at 25 past.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn. just continue. There's nothing to follow up, Mr. Masugu, on.
Well, Chair, I thought I would leave it to Mr. Molefe to convey what our advice is to
Yes,
you.
okay.
Rather than object.
Yes. No, that's all right. Okay, Mr. Slager.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. Molefe, you want to go first?
Yes, Chair. My legal advice is that the matter is still pending before the court and that it is better to not deal with it here because it is still before the court.
Well, what I can say is that I think you were busy when the issue arose. You were busy giving an explanation of why you stayed only for, I think you said 2 months in Parliament.
Yes,
I think that's what you were dealing with.
yes.
There is some importance in understanding why, if you are able for present purposes to give me that explanation without talking about a legal opinion, if you have been advised not to talk about it, that would be fine.
Yeah, as I have just said, there was a desire to unscramble the egg, and they thought that we could return the situation to status quo ante. But then that whole returning the situation to status quo ante became the subject of a legal,
Yes.
dispute.
Okay. Mr. Soler.
Thank you, Chair. So, Mr. Molefe, as the outcome of that exercise was that you returned to Eskom.
Yes, I did return.
You did. And so that's what, 4 months down the line after
Five.
about
4 or
5
5,
months.
yes.
Yeah. So the report of the public protector is still fresh at the time. And I want to know from you, were those concerns of the tainted reputation not good for you to stay at Eskom? The problem was Eskom. How will you look at the employees in the eyes when the public protector has made these allegations against you? Were they not there still?
Well, Chairperson, at the time, firstly, time had passed, and I've had time to come down and reflect on the issue. And I was confident that there is nothing in the public protector that is sustainable. Secondly,
Sorry, you were just repeat that sentence about the
I was
public protector.
confident that there is nothing in the public protector's report that can be sustained as an allegation against me. Secondly, the public protector had said within a short space of time, a commission of inquiry would be established and that within 18 months it would report back. At that time, the commission of inquiry was not inside. She had left the commission, so she made a ruling that somebody else must establish the commission. And
She said the president should establish the commission.
yes, somebody
Yeah.
else, the president should establish the commission. So she said something that she herself was not going to do. She said the president must establish them. And then there was controversy around the establishment of the there was toing and froing, and it was just not happening. So I thought, it looks like here we're going to wait for the coming back of Nele. So
I'm sorry for the coming back of
Nele.
Mele.
Yes, the left-handed one.
Okay.
He's the guy who escaped from Robben Island and said he will return. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and never returned. So,
For the, say, for the subscribers, for the transcribers, NXELE. Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
yes. So, so after 6 months of the public protector's report, nothing really was happening. I think, yeah, the commission was being established. I mean, they said 18 months, according to the public protector's report. It's now, I think, 5 years. And so I had to decide what to do. And then they also said that you could not have taken there is no action that happened because of the common mistake. So you should go back. So after thinking about
And who was saying that?
yeah, so now we get into the legal opinion.
Sorry?
So now we're getting into the legal opinion.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you see, you can't just say to me, they. I want to know who.
Yes. So, so that was the situation. And so after weighing the situation at that time, I decided, okay, maybe let's unscramble the egg in the way that they're proposing, that I go back. Yes.
Yes, okay, Mr.
Yes,
Slugger.
thank you, Chair. Yeah, you said 5 years, but it was 5 months, I think you meant to say.
5 months.
5 months, yeah. And,
5 months.
No, I think he was saying it's 5 years now.
It's 5 years
No,
since the public protector's report,
Yes.
which recommended 6 years. It's going for 6 years.
Well, I haven't done the calculation, but it's a number of years, yeah.
It will be 6 years in November. Chair.
I'm not going to attempt it, Chair.
Of,
So-
of course, there was a whole year that 2017 when there was litigation
Yes.
and that's why nothing was happening because there was litigation, yeah.
And so, Chair,
So-
the thing that needs to be appreciated is that during that period, our names were being maligned. We had no opportunity to explain in an appropriate forum what really happened. And really, the advice that I got is that please try not to explain outside a forum. That would be appropriate. These things of, you can't, what we were dealing with yesterday could never explain in a soundbite to the media. We needed to sit down like this and explain properly. So that was frustrating because I had this thing to explain and there was no proper forum. Of course, there was a parliamentary forum, but unfortunately, that parliamentary forum, it was a political forum. Parliament is a political place. So it was more about the politics of the thing rather than getting to the truth in a manner that I think you're trying to get to the truth. So my life had come to a standstill in a sense. It has been on standstill for going on 6 years because of the public protector's report, which she wrote without having had my side of the story.
Mr. Slugger?
Yes. Let me put this to you and hear your comment. And it is in the context of your explanation that the early retirement arrangement, you had made it with the board already in February 2016. There's an allegation that you were in fact not meant to stay long at Eskom. It was a passage for you to go to Parliament, earmarked to become the Minister of Finance.
Who made the
Your
allegation?
comment on that?
Who made the allegation?
It has been publicly reported.
No, I can't comment on that.
You
Chair.
can't comment on
I do not know anything about what you're talking
Okay. On your coming back to Eskom, how long did you stay?
2 weeks,
2 weeks.
yes. Yeah, barely 2 weeks.
And what happened?
The DA and Solidarity, and I think the EFF launched a court application to have me removed from Eskom. As soon as they launched the court application to have me removed from Eskom, the Minister of Public Enterprises wrote a letter to the board to say that he's giving them an instruction to remove me. So that I thought was unfair labor practice. There was no hearing. There's nothing that I had done. There was no process. And she had been party to an agreement to unscramble the egg by saying we're reverting to the status quo ante. And now she was reneging on that agreement without any recourse. So I went to the labor court. Chairperson, something strange happened at the labor court. They refused to hear the matter in which I was the applicant until the matter in which I was a respondent in the Pretoria High Court had been heard. I don't know, I'm not, maybe, Chairperson, they were correct. But I thought that if you approach a court, one of the rights that you have is a right to an outcome of the proceedings, whether the court agrees with you or doesn't, but not to say go to another forum. In fact, where you are not the applicant, another case. So the labor court matter was never heard about my removal as CEO in a manner that the minister did. That was never heard.
Okay.
I also felt let down by the judicial system as well at the time, rightly or wrongly. Maybe I was wrong.
Okay. Chairperson, quickly, I want to hand up for the document to be admitted as an exhibit, which is Mr. Molefe's opening speech, which he gave on his first appearance. I need to refer to certain paragraphs in it. That's the reason why I wish to have it handed up. This is the corrected one, Mr. Molefe. It's a document titled Statement by Brian Molefe, dated 15 January 2021. It has 9 pages. Mr. Molefe, you go to the end of it. You see there's a signature there above your name, Brian Molefe, dated
Yes.
14 February 2021.
Yes.
You confirm this to be...
Yes, that is my
Yes.
signature.
Thank you, Chair. I beg leave to have it admitted as exhibit U38.2, Chairperson.
The statement by Mr. Brian Molefe, dated 15 January 2021, on the front page, I think on the last page, it was signed on the 14th of January 2021, is admitted and will be marked as exhibit U38.2.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. Molefe, just certain things to clarify from this. Please turn to page 6 of exhibit U38.2, this statement. Paragraph 25. It says, it reads, Mr. Machela Koko, who interrogated at length about this agreement, told me that the board had not sanctioned it. He also
I'm sorry,
told
what paragraph?
25.
Okay.
So the context to this, well, let me read. Mr. Machela Koko, who I interrogated at length about this agreement, told me that the board had not sanctioned it. He also told me that the official who had signed it had no authority to do so. But this is hearsay evidence, which I shall not burden you with. I hope that Mr. Koko will shed more light on this aspect when the Commission ends its fascination with the suspensions of the executives in the hearing of his evidence. It is correct that you are referring here to the cooperation agreement.
Yes, it's a cooperation.
Yes. So because yesterday you were questioning whether the person, well, I think you were making the allegation or questioning, I'm not sure, that the person who signed it didn't have the authority to sign that agreement.
Yes.
But I think this statement clarifies that you don't know that.
I don't know that.
You don't know that the person didn't have the authority to sign.
As I say here, this is what I was told.
Yes. So the answer is a yes, that you don't know.
This is what I was told. Yes.
Yes, no, what
Yes.
what Mrs. Lega seeks to establish,
Yes, I don't know.
yeah.
Thank you.
I think yesterday there was a time in your evidence where my understanding was that you were raising questions as to whether the person had authority without definitely saying he didn't have. But I don't know whether at any stage yesterday you might have gone beyond simply raising questions whether he did have authority, he or she did have authority. I'm just saying I do recall that at a certain stage you were not saying he didn't have or she didn't have, but you seem to be raising questions about whether the person had authority, and I think you referred to the amounts involved as being amounts that should go to the board or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Is my recollection correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
From what I know and have been told, and from what it actually makes sense that it may well be so.
Yeah. So the position as it stands is you are not sure that he or she didn't have authority, but you have question marks whether he or she did.
Yes, I have question marks.
Okay, all right. Mr. Selega?
Thank you, Chair. The next paragraph, paragraph 26, in Exhibit U38.2, it says, Dr. Ben Ngubani, and members of his board understood the situation perfectly well. From them, I received a blessing to do what was right, and for that I'm thankful. The first line or sentence, Dr. Ben Ngubani and members of his board understood the situation perfectly well. Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, they understood that Glencore was trying to extort money from us. They did. And they had given evidence to that effect. Dr. Ben Ngubani came here and he talked about people who came from overseas to try and treat us like little boys here. Dr. Naidu also talked about the fact that Glencore couldn't have it that way. So they have already confirmed what I'm saying here, that they understood that this request for an increase from 150 to 400 and something, my recollection is 530, the initial amount was 530. It's just not sustainable. And from them, they said the CEO should deal with the matter and do what is right.
Let's first deal with the issue of what you say is there evidence about extortion. Dr. Ngubane did testify to that effect. I don't think Dr. Petnaiju testified to that effect.
Hang on, Mr. Sleka. Before the adjournment, I think you were dealing with a certain line of inquiry relating to Mr. Molefe, his departure from Eskom, him going to Parliament and leaving Parliament. You're now asking him about what's in this, and I'm getting the impression that it's a different line of inquiry.
It is.
Is it because you are done with the other line? Because if you are not done, shouldn't you finish that? And then the statement is not going to go away. It is here. You can
Yes.
always come back to it.
Yes, Chair. Let's see. I thought I had...
Or you are close to finishing with
No, I'm
whatever
not.
questions.
I'm not.
I would prefer that we
We finished it.
we finish one line of inquiry, unless what you are looking for is what you have said. It's not.
It's
part
unrelated.
Of it. Yeah,
No, it's unrelated, Chair.
yeah.
It's unrelated.
I think let's try and finish the earlier line.
Would Chair have any specific questions there? Because I had exhausted, I couldn't go any further on the pension issue, or into the pension issue, I couldn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, the pension issue has been decided by the courts, isn't it?
I asked him my last question, Chair, and he said he can't comment. I think if Chair has follow-up questions, Chair might raised with him.
Okay, all right. Mr. Molefe, when you were in Parliament and you were approached by, you said, Ms. Daniels, to say the minister wanted to
Unscramble the egg.
yeah, unscramble the egg. You were already a member of Parliament.
I was a member.
And you could continue as a member of Parliament.
I could have continued.
Yes. Was there any particular reason why you chose to go back to Eskom as opposed to saying, look, I've now come to Parliament, I've been asked to represent the people, to be one of the people's representative, and I'm going to focus on being a member of Parliament. I don't want to go back to Eskom because that's a place which is connected with the tainting that I got from the Public Protector's report, and I had left because I thought it was untenable to continue as Group CEO of Eskom given that situation. And it's only a few months since I left Eskom. Why didn't you adopt that approach? Because it's not like you were going to be unemployed. You had a job in Parliament.
I think, Chair, maybe the fault is in my upbringing. That when people in authority say, go to Eskom, or we think you should go to Eskom, would you go to Eskom to help? And I believe that I can help. I readily agree to do so. when the Northwest came and said, would you consider going to Parliament? I readily agreed and said, okay, if you think that is a good thing to do, I will do it. Minister comes and says, look, this situation is very bad and we need to revert to status quo ante. Would you consider going back? I said, yes. Well, after thinking about it a little bit, I said, yes. So I have hardly ever in my life turned down an instruction from authority that I consider to be leading me, that I consider to be my leadership. So when people that are leading us are saying, yeah, we think you will be better used here, I hardly ever argue. I just go there and do my best. Yes. And that is the context.
Emma, is it correct to take that answer as meaning you yourself were not the one pushing to be allowed to go back to Eskom at that time? You responded to requests to say you should go back.
No, I did not initiate it.
You did not initiate your going
I did not
back.
initiate it.
Yes.
Yeah, it came in as a request, and the request came in a manner that, look, we are in trouble. And in any way, the risk is that the good work done to stop load shedding may be undone. So maybe you need to go back. And then I considered that, and I thought that would be a shame. And then I agreed to go back.
Now, I think I may have said this last time when you were here,
Yes,
but if I didn't say it, I must say it now to give you a chance to deal with it.
yes,
That the commission had, I think from Mr. Godan, if I'm not mistaken,
yes,
that he had been told, I don't know whether the day before he was dismissed as Minister of Finance in March 2017 or after, I can't remember, by one of the leaders of the ANC. I think he may have said it was Mr. Mantashe, I may be mistaken, that when the then President Zuma spoke to the top six, or spoke to the top five because he would be the sixth, about his intention to remove Minister Godan as Minister of Finance. One of the things he told them was that he either intended to make you Minister of Finance or he was proposing that you should be the next Minister of Finance. As a result of that evidence, if I recall correctly, the commission approached Mr. Gwede Montage, Ms. Jessie Duarte, and Dr. Zwelinkize, some of the people who would have been part of the top six at the time, and asked them to give an account in an affidavits of any discussions that they may have had with President Zuma at the time concerning the removal of Mr. Godan. And they all filed affidavits in response. And one of the things that they said was that indeed, or was that Mr. Zuma had said that he wanted to appoint you as the Minister of Finance to replace Mr. Godan? So that's the affidavits that they filed, and they all said the response from the top five was to the effect that no, that was not, they objected to that. And we do know, of course, that Mr. Godan's replacement was ultimately Mr. Kikaba. You know. Now, the question is whether either Mr. Zuma or anybody had ever spoken to you at any stage about whether you would be prepared to accept an appointment as Minister of Finance, whether it was President Zuma or anybody that might have spoken to you?
No, Chairperson.
Nobody ever spoke to you about
Nobody.
that?
Nobody.
Yes.
I don't think actually it would have been appropriate to speak to me before the top five, the top six has approved. And so the top
Yes,
six
okay.
never approved, so there was nothing
Okay.
to talk about.
Okay. No, well, I don't know how the ANC operates, but
Yes.
I was thinking that he may have, that is President Zuma,
No.
or those who advise him might have thought it's futile to raise the name before the top six if the person is not interested at all in the first place, and therefore you might just want to find out whether, if approached, he would be prepared, then you raise it. So I don't know how it works. But you say, as far as you know, it would not be raised with whoever is sought to be appointed before it's raised with the top six.
Well, that's what I think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
that's what I think.
But you say
It was
nobody
not
has
raised with
spoken to
me.
you about it.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised that it was not raised with me because it was never approved, as you say.
Yes. Now, part of what I think I said last time, but I want to make sure that I say it so that you can deal with it, because it would be unfair not to let you deal with it if you haven't dealt with it, is this, that there are a number of things that the Commission has had, which in the eyes of some people may seem to give some credence to the suggestion that there may have been a plan there may have been a plan to have you as Minister of Finance that maybe was there for quite some time. One, Mr. Jonas's evidence before the Commission was that at the meeting that he had with one of the Gupta brothers, which it seems may have been Tony Gupta, because he wasn't sure himself, but the evidence has established that the Gupta brother who was in the residence, the Gupta residence, on the day when Mr. Jonas was there was Tony Gupta. He says the Gupta brother that he had a discussion with on the 23rd of October 2015 said that the Minister of Finance, Mr. Nene, was going to be dismissed because, as I recall the evidence, he was not working with them, which was understood to be with the Guptas, and they wanted him to indicate whether he could accept an appointment as Minister of Finance, in which case, as I understand it, he would have to work with them. They offered him what he says they offered him in terms of money. But he says one of the things they said was there are a number of people that they were working with. And he says they mentioned your name. They mentioned Minister Lynn Brown's name. I can't remember if there was another name. And in regard to you, Mr. Jonas says the Gupta brother said something along the lines that your career is well taken care of. I'm using my own words. So you have that. And then now we have Mr. Hank
Yes,
Bester,
Bester, that's right.
who testified here that in 2014, at some stage in 2014, in that meeting with Mr. Salim Essa, Salim Essa said they had decided that you would be the next boss of Eskom. And of course, there is that publication, The New Age, we talked about it, I think, last time, which in December 2010 had an article which was maybe suggesting, because maybe it was not definite, suggesting that you were going to be the next group CEO of Transnet. And we do know that you did become the next group CEO of Transnet. We do know that you did become group CEO of Eskom. Unfortunately, Mr. Zuma has so far not been able to come to the commission and deal with the question whether the evidence on affidavit given by Mr. Mantashe, Ms. Jessie Duarte, and Dr. Zwelin Mkhize, that he mentioned your name as the person that he wanted to replace Mr. Gordon with, whether that is true. But that's what they have said. So you then think, well, if Mr. Jonas's evidence of his meeting with the Gupta brother on the 23rd of October 2015 is correct, it looks like the Guptas were looking for a minister that would work with them. And Minister Nene was dismissed on December 9. Mr. Van Rooyen was appointed. Now, Mr. Jonas says that at that meeting, one of the things that the Gupta brother told him was, when you become Minister of Finance, if you need advisors, we will provide you with advisors. Now, Mr. Van Rooyen gets appointed as Minister of Finance, and is alleged to have come to the National Treasury with advisors that he allegedly didn't know. The issue of what he knew and how it came about is still being looked into by the Commission. And then Minister Gordhan gets dismissed. Oh, then you are put in Parliament. You take your seat in Parliament. And then Minister Gordhan gets dismissed. But if the evidence on affidavit by Dr. Zwelin Mkhize, Ms. Jessie Duarte, and Mr. Mantashe is true, we then know that President Zuma wanted to replace Mr. Gordhan with you as Minister of Finance. And then you leave, I think you leave after Mr. Gordhan has left and Mr. Gigaba has been appointed, you go back to Eskom. So I'm just saying there are these things, and it's only fair that you should get a chance to say what you can say. You might be able to say, look, I don't know anything about what people think or what they said or what they talk about in whatever corners. I can't comment. Or you might say, no, I can comment, and this
No,
is what
that
I
one,
have to
the
say.
first one was my answer.
The first one.
Yes. The first
Oh,
one.
the first one.
The first one.
Okay, which is you don't want to.
I don't want to comment. All of the
Yeah.
things that you mentioned.
Yes.
I don't feature anywhere.
Yes,
I was not
yes.
there. I never said
Yes,
anything.
yes,
I was
yes.
not present.
Yes.
Some of the people I haven't even met, like
Yes,
Salim Esa.
yes.
So those things happened there.
Yeah.
And without my knowledge about it.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and this great plan, I was never aware of it. And I had nothing to do with it. I can't comment. Yes. My career, Chair.
Yes.
I can comment about my career.
Yes.
Chairperson, I have a Bachelor of Commerce from the University of South Africa, Masters of Business Leadership, and postgraduate diploma in economics from University of London. I have attended courses on executive management all over the world, to Harvard and several other universities. I have worked in the National Treasury as a senior manager, as a Deputy Director General. I was CEO of the PIC, where we grew the assets from 300 billion to 950 billion under my management. And I went to Transnet. I worked at Transnet. We implemented the market demand strategy. We saw Transnet becoming a profitable company and actually turning around while I was there. I went to Eskom and dealt with load shedding. I do not need anybody who meets Mr. Jonas in a corridor somewhere to be dealing with my career. My career does not need exogenous factors. I can quite well take care of myself. And I think that with the experience and with the training and education that I have, I can survive anywhere. So, and I can be up to any task that I'm given. So, I do not agree that I required, as Mr. Jonas alleges, somebody from the Gupta family to be.
Well, he didn't say you required. He says he says he was told. Yeah. Yeah. He didn't say you required that.
Yeah, so he does not have personal knowledge.
No, he was just saying what the conversation was. Yeah. Mr. Selega?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Molefe, did you then have to resign at Parliament?
Yes, I resigned.
And you got a pension payout?
I actually didn't even pursue it, Chair. I think I was entitled to it, but I didn't pursue it. I didn't pursue it. I don't know.
Could have been 2
For the 2
months.
months that I was there, I made contributions. So technically speaking, I could have asked for the little bit that I had contributed.
Okay, that's all right. Let's go back, if Chair is finished on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We can go back to that exhibit U38.2. We were on page 7, paragraph 26. And you had said that Dr. Ngubane and the board knew that Glencore was extorting money.
Yes.
So Dr. Ngubane did testify to that effect. But then he was confronted with the prepayment decision that the board made on the 9th of December 2015. That prepayment of 1.68 billion rand.
Dr. Ngubane was confronted.
Yes,
Yes.
with the evidence in regard to that. Because the board members who came here and have filed affidavits, they say they understood the submission for that prepayment to motivate for a prepayment to Glencore /OCM and not to Tegeta. So I had to say, how do you reconcile your view that Glencore was extorting money when OCM proposed an increase of the coal And yet, a couple of months later, you give them you make a decision which you understood to be a decision for a prepayment to Lenco of 1.6 billion.
And what did he say?
I don't think you could give an answer to that, because he kept on saying, well, that's how he understood the submission to be, that it was a prepayment to Glencoe. Dr. Ped Naidu even has a note written out to the board supporting the prepayment to Glencoe, and says that Glencoe CEO, as well as the Eskom CEO, must make a joint statement.
No, I can't comment on that.
Your comment? You can't
I
comment.
have no comment on that. Yeah, it was in my absence. They were giving evidence to you.
Mr. Molefe,
No, I think it was in my absence. They were giving evidence here. I think that if Mr. Seliga requires any clarification, they should deal with it.
But did you know about the board decision?
Actually, no. As I was explaining yesterday, on the 1st of December, I went for an operation to repair my shoulder. And I did not come back from the operation for 30 hours. I was in an induced coma. And I was in a hospital for a few days thereafter. But then I was released to go home, but I was ill-disposed, and I was at home for the whole of December and most of January. So, and that decision was on the 5th of December. So on the 5th of December, I was actually very ill. I was not at Eskom.
It was on the 9th of December.
Yeah, even the 9th I was still very ill.
Yeah, but on your return, didn't you learn about the board decision?
Yeah, on my return, I got to know about it. There had been a coal crisis.
Yeah, my point is, did you know that the board's decision, in the board's own mind, was about prepayment to Glencoe?
No, I knew that there had been a prepayment, and that the prepayment was converted to a guarantee. There was a prepayment decision, and the prepayment was converted to a guarantee, and the guarantee was never called.
Yes.
And so when I came to know about it, I was concerned that suddenly we have an exposure. And fortunately, it was never called. And so I thought, oh, we survived. And that was, for me, that was the end of the matter.
You know that the submission that ultimately served before the board for that decision to be made was preceded by an exchange of correspondence between Mr. Machela Koko and the DMR. Did you know that?
I knew about this after it had happened.
But-
And yeah, I knew about this after it had happened. Long after it had happened. In fact, yeah, long after it had happened.
Yeah. But you know, in Mr. Machela Koko's affidavit, he says the approach to the DMR, essentially, I'm paraphrasing it, it was the decision you and him made.
The approach to the DMR,
Yes.
no. There had been a coal crisis.
There had been?
A coal crisis.
Yes.
There is a committee at Eskom which deals with coal crisis. When there is a primary energy crisis. In November there was a coal crisis. So even when I left to go to hospital, I knew that there was a coal crisis. I was worried as I was going to hospital about how it would be dealt with. But I remember thinking, you know what? I have to go for an operation. They will deal with it. There is an acting CEO. It's not that Eskom can function without me. Yeah. But no. The approach to DMR happened after the 1st of December, as far as I remember.
Yeah, no, I'm just giving you his version.
Oh.
And I want to, again, it's not me.
So this version, is it on affidavit?
Yes. Eskom band-
Actually, I literally just got it now. I haven't read his affidavit.
Oh,
Yes.
should I go to it?
No, I take your bona fides.
Yes. I want the chairperson. Shall I read to you, Chair? I must read to the chairperson. This is Eskom Bundle 15, bracket A.
Okay, let's. But while he's preparing that, I would like us to take a short adjournment, just 5 minutes.
Okay, Chair.
Let's adjourn.
Thank you.
Okay, let's continue.
Thank you.
You had referred to bundle 15, Eskom bundle 15.
Correct, Chair.
Yes.
Page 103.
Yes.
Under the heading, the DME. Paragraph 3 point, I can start at 365. At this time, as referred to already, Eskom had already communicated with the DME regarding DME suspension of OCM mining licenses, etc. The DME was accordingly already largely in the loop. 366, Mr. Molefe, that's the one I want to refer you to. He says, Mr. Molefe and I decided we needed to keep the DME up to date on the developments that had occurred and to request its assistance by the means it had to facilitate a resolution of the impasse that quite clearly still existed despite the potential sale to Oak Bay/Digeta. From our perspective, now I'm not sure how does he know about the sale, because this is early in December. He says, from our perspective, the matter had now to be brought to conclusion one way or the other, i.e. either by sale of OCM or its business and OCH's other assets on a viable basis, or Glencore's bringing the business rescue to an end, and matters continuing on the basis of the existing Hendrina CSA, including its dispute resolution mechanisms. You turn the page, paragraph 368. Then he says, we, and if you read it in context with the paragraphs before, preceding, that would be you and him. We requested Ms. Daniels to draft the required letter. I received the first draft at 18:46 on Friday, 4 December 2015. After discussion of its contents with her and the Deputy Director General of the DME, a second draft followed on Sunday, 6 December 2015 at 19:55. I dispatched the letter by email to the Director General of the DME the same evening. Ms. Daniels' initial draft with the covering email she sent me is then document MMK18. Paragraph 370 says, suggestions have been made that our letter to the Department of Mineral Resources was in some or other manner irregular. I deny that it is the case. We had previously intervened with the DME regarding the suspension of OCM's mining license and its operations. The DME presented an avenue to try to exert influence to bring matters to some form of finality, one way or the other, to ensure continued coal supplies to Hendrina. Let me stop there. So according to him, it was the idea of both you and him to have a letter addressed to the DMR. Your comment?
Chairperson, at different times during the business rescue, we said and worked out different scenarios. Of course, the one scenario was liquidation. The other one was the sale of the business. What would you do if that happened? Not to any party, but just the sale of the business. What would that mean? And we just sort of mapped out different scenarios in discussion. As I say, during the month of November, there was a bit of a coal crisis as well. And on the 1st of December 2015, I went in for an operation. So what happened while I was away, I think, is that, and before I left, I did say we need to keep Department of Minerals and Energy abreast about our situation here concerning judicial management, possible sale, possible liquidation, or maybe if they rescue and continue with 150, we need to make them aware that we are having this kind of problem. And so I think after I left, because if Ms. Suzanne Daniels drafted the letter on the 4th, I don't know when she got the instruction to draft the letter. It must have been maybe the 2nd or the 3rd or maybe the 1st, but I was not there. I was not part of that discussion. I never saw that letter to DME because I was not at work. And the snowball effect that happened afterwards. But I do agree that there had been discussions with the primary energy people, led by Mr. Machela Koko, about the implication of this judicial management, business rescue. Yes, but never with, and in the discussions we did say we need to keep DMR and DPE informed about our situation. Yes. But that was like not, the discussions were not conclusive of a, so it was more like, what do we, scenario planning. What do we do if this happens? What do we do if this happens? What do we do if this
Yeah.
happens?
No, it is important for us to know exactly what happened because, you see, Mr. Koko has put a version and he will be coming back. He is expecting us to have put this to you so that we are able to deal with it in relation to him. So we must be able to say to him, okay, we read out this to Mr. Molefe. Mr. Molefe either said, yes, that's what happened, or no, that's not what happened.
No.
That's why I need that clarification.
Yeah, we had general discussions about informing DMR about the different scenarios that are likely to play out with the judicial management and the coal crisis. There was a coal crisis. And and that was about my involvement. And then after that, I went to hospital. And after I had gone to hospital, this letter was drafted. And it led to the memo and the decision and the guarantee. But when all of that happened, I was not on the scene.
Yes, let's do this. If you look at paragraph 366.
366.
366, yeah, on page 103. So he says, Mr. Molefe and I decided that we needed to keep the DME up to date on the developments that had occurred and to request its assistance by the means it had to facilitate a resolution of the impasse that quite clearly still existed. So he puts it at the level of a decision. And then, if you read paragraph 368, that's where he says, we requested Ms. Daniels to draft the required letter.
No. The request to draft a letter, I was not there.
Okay, let's deal with 366 first.
366 is generally saying that with all the scenarios that are possible, we will need to involve the DME.
So you confirm what he
Yes,
said?
yes.
Okay.
That because we were in business rescue and did not know what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
And so it had all sorts of implications. We needed to keep the DME abreast of development.
Yeah, but not
That
only
was,
that.
sorry?
Sorry, not only to keep it abreast of the developments, is to request its assistance by the means it had to facilitate a resolution of the impasse.
Yeah, we said that we never said what kind of assistance. And we never discussed what kind of assistance.
Is,
And actually, you captured it correctly when you say by any means they had, but we said we must keep them informed and see how they can help us out of this thing. Because we did not know what was going to happen. We were in business rescue with Optima.
okay,
Yes.
so 366, you confirm it. What Mr. Koko is saying That's confirmed. You only have a problem with 368 where he says, we request.
Yeah, but also 366, I confirm it, that
With some
we did- there was
qualification.
no specific assistance that we requested. It was just a matter of, in a discussion, when we discussed the scenarios, that we must inform DME and possibly get assistance from them. But in terms of the specifics, and even the letter happened just after I left.
Yeah, you confirm it's you and him who requested Ms. Suzanne Daniel to
No,
draft the
I
letter.
did not, I did not request Ms. Suzanne Daniels with Mr. Cook.
Oh,
Yeah, I think the request to Ms. Suzanne Daniels happened between the 1st and the 4th. I don't know, when did Ms. Suzanne Daniels say she got the request?
so what sort of request assistance did Mr. Koko and you have in mind?
I don't, we, just broad terms, they will, the mine is going into, is in business rescue. It might be sold, or it might go into liquidation.
Or it might what?
Huh?
It might be sold or it might?
Go into liquidation. That would be the three possible outcomes of business rescue. First one is the business rescue practitioners actually rescue it. Second one is that they say they can't rescue it, so they sell. The third one is they can't rescue it and they can't sell, or they will not sell, so they go into liquidation. So the question is, if any of these three scenarios pans out, what is our reaction as Eskom to it? None of it should come as a surprise to me.
Yeah.
What is our reaction
Yes.
to any of these three scenarios?
Yes.
Whatever the scenario that works out is, we must have informed DMR.
Yeah.
And if any assistance is required from them, we should be in a position to ask for assistance if we need it.
Yes. But just tell the chairperson, because it was not a question of if any assistance is required from them. Mr. Machela Gogo says you decided to request its assistance.
No, this thing was drafted by Mopedi from Sukmeka. So what I'm telling you is my understanding of even what he was trying to say, and maybe not captured properly here. It was not asking for specific assistance, but if any of the scenarios pans out, what is going to happen? I think you must have an understanding of the context in which this was drafted. It was not to ask for, they must therefore do this. And in fact, Mr. Slick, if you look at the letter that Ms. Daniels drafted,
Yeah, we can get.
I don't think it has a request for any specific assistance.
Yeah, you struggle to see what the letter actually
Yes.
is intended to
The
achieve.
letter was just saying, we're having a problem, and we're just letting you know that we have a crisis.
But let me take it further, because you see, before the letter is drafted, there are email exchange between Mr. Koko and Mr. Jewel Rapela of the
Mr. who?
DM. Jewel Rapela.
Yes.
And they're talking about this issue and the formulation of the draft.
What is the date of the emails?
It's from the 4th of December. So they exchange emails between the 4th until the 7th of December.
After the letter has been drafted.
Yes, during that time. The letter gets to be drafted during that time.
Mr. Slega, I was not there. I do not know what that was about, and I cannot comment on it.
Yeah, no, that's all right then. So are you saying to the chairperson you didn't have any specific request in mind?
No.
No. So we know then, once Eskom got a response from the DMR, that response had a prepayment aspect mentioned in it, the letter from the DMR. And that letter was used in the submission as a basis upon which the DMR requested Eskom to make a prepayment.
Mr. Mancha, of his own volition,
Close.
Mr. Mancha, I think, of his own volition,
Yes.
suggested the prepayment. I said somewhere that maybe that was the genesis of the problem.
Maybe?
That was the genesis of the problem. However, I was not there, I do not know. But my reading of this document is that the idea of the prepayment, the first time the prepayment arises, is when Mr. Mancha writes to Mr. Koko and said, I've read your letter, you say you have a problem, just do whatever you can do, and even consider prepayment. And that came from DMR.
Yes. And he does say the letter was not prepared by him. He found the letter on his desk.
Yeah, that's even worse because it was not even at Eskom, it was in his office now.
Yeah.
I was not even at Eskom, I was in hospital. So I can't comment on how he got to sign a letter that he denies he signed.
Yeah. Insofar as the submission is concerned, who did you understand was to be paid that prepayment, the 1.6 billion?
Chairperson, I would rather not speculate on that submission, the decision that was taken, the interpretation of the decision. There are people who were directly involved, and I think they can shed better light than I can, because I was ill-disposed and in hospital. My knowledge of this matter came to be, in the end, when I came back, very peripheral. I just knew that we had a guarantee. I was concerned that we had a guarantee, and then suddenly the guarantee was not called, and that was it. I actually never really thoroughly interrogated it, because it never even became an audit. So I would rather not speculate on what was happening there.
Okay. Insofar as you say there was a coal crisis,
Insofar as,
you say there was a coal crisis.
yes,
Where was this crisis? Is that in respect of a specific power station?
no. There is a committee at Eskom that
But-
did, yeah, there's a committee at Eskom that declares a coal crisis in
Yes.
terms of our operating procedures. That meets regularly. That committee is above everybody, even above the board. And they assess our coal requirements and then declare that we have a crisis or we don't have a crisis. So they assess the stockpiles in the entire organization. And then they meet and then they decide that there is a crisis. And once they've decided, nobody can overrule them. It's like an independent. It's made up of Eskom officials, but not even the CEO can overrule what they say.
They are experts.
They're experts, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I believe in November they had met and had said, we have a coal crisis. Once that has been declared, it means, you know the meaning of a coal crisis?
No, but my question was where? Which power station?
No, it was an Eskom coal crisis.
Well, let me...
Coal crisis meaning that there was, the shortage of coal was too much.
Yes, for the
Yes.
entire organization.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay. Okay. It's because there isn't such a declaration in November of a coal crisis.
Is that
That's one. Number two...
is that your evidence?
No, we don't have that.
Yeah, but the fact
Number
that you don't
two-
have it does not mean that it didn't happen. I mean, were you there, Mr. Sele?
No, let me finish.
I mean, how can you emphatically say that there isn't such a decision?
Let me
Hang on,
finish.
Mr.
Let me
Molefe, wait for Mr. Selega to.
Yes. Number two, the context within which we are reading here, it's about Hendrina and the submission related to the coal supply to Hendrina.
Yes.
That's why we need to know, when you say a coal crisis, Is it about this submission? Because you and Mr. Koko are talking about approaching the DMR in respect of the Hendrina issue.
No.
The paragraphs I've read.
But Mr. Slager, I've just put those paragraphs in context, and you are ignoring what I'm saying about it. And you are insisting on going with your version, your understanding of your evidence as you want to present it.
I think, Mr. Molefe, go back to clarifying how the issue of a coal crisis in respect of the whole of Eskom
Yes,
comes in or came into the question of Hendrina.
yes.
Yeah, how did it,
Now,
how
let
does
me
it come in?
explain. There is a committee at Eskom which can declare a coal crisis. That committee did declare a coal crisis in November before I got sick. Now, the meaning of a coal crisis is that in terms of the rules, Eskom has to undertake extraordinary measures to deal with the coal crisis. And in fact, in their
Declaration.
yeah, it's not a declaration, in their operating manual or guidelines or there's another word that I'm looking for, but in the document that
Policy.
yeah, policy, it specifically says during a coal crisis, you may undertake extraordinary measures, including the pre-purchase of coal. Including the pre-purchase of coal. So, all I'm saying is that a coal crisis had been declared. We were sitting with a business rescue at Hendrina. We were sitting with business rescue at Hendrina, and there had been a coal crisis. And we then mapped out different scenarios of how to deal with it. Discuss them, generally like brainstorming, and said, what happens when this happens? What happens when this happens? What happens when this happens? And then, in that brainstorming, we also said we need to keep the government informed, including DMR and DPE, informed about our situation before it becomes a crisis that we cannot handle. And then I went off to hospital. And then after I had gone to hospital, I think it's after I had left, Mr. Koko asked Ms. Daniels to draft a letter to DMR. And the letter was sent. I was not there. I saw the letter much later. And DMR's response. But when I look at DMR's response, the people that talked about a prepayment, even before we did, was DMR. But not only that, it was not out of line because, in fact, in the coal crisis context, prepayments are envisaged. So I think DMR knew that in terms of in line with policy, remember that you may also do prepayment. And then, yeah, that is as far as I can shed light from a policy point of view and what was happening.
Yes, I hear what you're saying. The only clarification I seek to have
Yes.
is insofar as what you're saying is at variance with what Mr. Koko is saying.
Yes.
Because Mr. Koko was power station specific.
Yes.
He
In the
was
letter.
here in the affidavit, in the letter, in the submission, it was power station specific.
Yes.
And the prepayment was also entity specific
Yes.
in respect of a particular power station. But your explanation takes it beyond that. And that's why I'm saying we don't have that information.
We don't have?
we don't have the information that you are now putting before us. We can only go by what Mr. Koko has said in his affidavit, which is consistent with the submission.
You see, Mr. Seliga, you are trying to say that we instructed Ms. Daniels to ask for a prepayment.
No, I'm not trying to say anything. I'm putting to you what Mr. Koko is writing in his affidavit.
But I admit, I say we discussed the different scenarios in as far as judicial management is concerned. And that there are different scenarios, different outcomes that are possible.
Yes,
And whatever the outcome, we have to be prepared
yes,
for any of the outcomes.
yes,
And in the process, we must inform DMR.
yes.
We did not go into specifics that this is exactly how the crisis is going to be dealt with.
Yes.
It was at brainstorming stage when I left the scene.
Yes, then we moved on to the prepayment.
And then I was mentioning the coal crisis because in this context, the prepayment arises twice before it actually happened. The one is there was a policy that allows for prepayment when there is a coal crisis. The second one is that the DMR, in their response to Mr. Koko's letter, themselves said, consider a prepayment. That was Mr. Mancha's letter, which he now denies that he signed, but it has his signature.
Okay.
So that is all I was trying to explain. I don't know if that is complex.
Yeah, I'm not for a moment questioning the basis for the prepayment, whether it was allowed or not allowed. I'm not. All I'm saying to you is we are at the point where I'm asking you about the coal crisis. And I needed to know, what coal crisis are you referring to?
What coal crisis?
Are you referring to? Because the...
At Henrina.
Say again?
The coal crisis at Henrina.
No, what coal crisis are you referring to in November? Because the context in which we are talking about this decision for the prepayment was power station specific and a particular supplier specific. This supplier would have been, the prepayment was meant to assist the supplier to supply the Henrina power station. The pre-purchase of coal from Optimum Coal Mine Pty Ltd. Eskom requires continuity of supply to the Henrina power station of 5.5 million tons per annum at an average price of, and then they give the price. But that is Henrina power station. And it's in that context I'm putting this to you.
Chairperson, I was not part of the prepayment decision at Henrina, and I can therefore not comment.
Okay.
You can't comment on it.
Yes.
Mr. Slinger?
Thank you, Chair, because let me put this to you, then we can also see whether you can or cannot comment. Henrina Power Station was not in crisis in November or December or January 2015 or 2016. Let me say, when this decision was made, Henrina Power Station was not in crisis.
Was it in business rescue? Or am I making a mistake?
No.
Just speak up, Mr.
I say, was it in business rescue or am I making a mistake?
No, I'm talking the power station now.
The power station.
Yes, was not in a crisis.
But Mr. Seliga, if the mine next door is in business rescue, the mine that supplies it with coal, it was in business rescue. The outcome of business rescue was going to affect the operations of Henrina.
But just comment on what I'm saying to you. The Henrina Power Station was not in a coal crisis in December 2015. What is your comment on that?
Oh,
Is it, do you, is
I
it,
was,
are you denying it?
I was not at Eskom in December 2015, so I'm not in a position to comment.
Okay. You had, in fact, on the 3rd of December, which we said yesterday, the evidence that came out yesterday, on the 3rd of September 2015, concluded the interim arrangement with OCM to supply coal to Hendrina.
Yes,
And that subsisted until the end of July 2016.
yes.
Yes. So they kept on supplying even in December. The power station was not in a coal crisis.
Chairperson, can I make a suggestion? To answer this question of the crisis, I suggest that the Commission's investigators go and look at the Coal Crisis Committee minutes. And that will help Mr. Sele
Yeah.
to talk about crisis, because I think we are not, the people that knew exactly the nature of the crisis and what the crisis was is the Coal Crisis Committee that was in operation. And it was an extraordinary committee that existed.
So
That is my suggestion.
yeah. We know of a coal crisis. It's not a coal crisis.
What is it?
On the 23rd of December 2015, an emergency was declared, but in respect of Arnott Power Station, not Hendrina. And let me come back to this.
Is the suggestion, Mr. Selega, that an emergency, the declaration of an emergency is the same as the declaration of a coal crisis?
Chair, I can't give a direct answer to that question because the declaration of emergency in December in respect of Arnott Power Station was looking at the future in January 2016 if the Arnott employees were to stop the trucks from delivering coal.
So,
So it was,
Mr. Sele,
You see, as I understood you,
yes, Chair.
you seek to say there was no coal crisis, but you use the fact that there was a declaration of an emergency in support of that. And I don't think you can do that unless the idea is that the declaration of an emergency is the same as the declaration of a coal crisis, because you said there was a declaration of emergency in regard to
Arnott
and
Power
not in
Station.
regard to
Hendrina.
Hendrina.
No.
But if emergency and coal crisis are two different things, then your thinking might not hold. Because
Okay.
if the two are different things, notionally you could have a declaration of an emergency and a declaration of a coal crisis at the same time.
Yes, let me answer the chairperson based on what we see. The emergency was declared in contemplation of shortage of coal supply, which then would assume, and I say I assume because I don't know, they will have to explain to us that constitutes a coal crisis. Perhaps it does if there's a shortage less than what you need.
Yeah, well, it may well be that the declaration of a coal crisis is resorted to when the crisis has commenced. It may well be that that is the case.
Yeah.
It may well be that first you have the emergency and then you have the crisis, if the emergency is forward-looking.
Yeah, and that's why in this particular case of a declaration check, I'm at pains to explain that the crisis, using the word crisis, was not when the declaration was made. They were saying there might be a situation in January which might result in the Arnold power station not getting the coal that it requires. The strike action might erupt and employees might block the trucks delivering. But they will explain to us that that is the
Shouldn't
saying.
you first get the explanation,
Yeah.
then we know exactly what the
Yeah.
position is.
Yes.
So-
I can leave that aside.
So that is your evidence, Mr. Selig.
No, of course, that's the evidence given to us by Eskom. But at this present moment, we're talking about the Hendrina power station. And I accept your explanation to the chairperson that you can't comment any
Yes.
further. But I'm putting now to you the situation as you would know it. Oh, but I've already put it to you. The 3rd of September 2015, there's an interim arrangement which ran all
Yes.
the way to July 2016. And Chair, what I was saying then to Mr. Molefe was that the Hendrina power station was taken care of, and taken care of by OCM under Glencoe.
And what does taken care of mean?
There was a supply of coal to the Hendrina power station.
I was not there. I
You
don't
were
know,
not there.
Mr.
Okay. But you knew about the interim arrangement.
Chairperson, I was not at Eskom in December. Mr. Molefe knows better what happened than I do.
Yeah. But what it means, Mr. Molefe, because you can accept the agreement, the existence of the agreement with OCM to supply coal to Hendrina Power Station, and in the same breath, have this discussion with Mr. Koko that there is a crisis and you have to approach the DME and request their assistance. And this is in respect of the Hendrina Power Station.
When did business rescue start?
In August,
Yes. So in December, there was business rescue.
yes.
Yes. So I have tried to explain to you, Mr. Selig, that the outcome of business rescue itself suggests a crisis. The fact that a company is in business rescue means it is in crisis, because companies don't go into business rescue because things are going well. And so the outcome of business rescue is one of three things, as I have tried to explain. Firstly, the business rescue practitioners will
First,
be,
first the chairperson.
the business rescue practitioners will be able to rescue the company. The business rescue practitioners might not be able to rescue the company, in which instance they will either sell it or liquidate it. The question for us as affected customers is, what happens in the event of any of the three scenarios? That is what I'm trying to explain. That had to be discussed. We can't, it's risk management. We can't pretend that everything is okay there because it's under business rescue. There's going to be an outcome to the business rescue. If the outcome is the company is rescued, it's fine. If they liquidate, what happens? And if they sell, what happens? And all I'm saying, Mr. Seleke, is we had these discussions. We had these discussions, and that is the context of the crisis that I'm talking about. You talk as if because we signed an agreement in September, everything was fine. Everything might have been fine. They might have been supplying coal, but they were in business rescue. They were not a normal company that was operating. They were being rescued from a disaster by a legally recognized process in South Africa.
Yeah. I think your explanation would be cogent if in August, after Eskom learned that OCM is in business rescue, to take the step that you took of the submission, approaching the DMR, and then you say it's because we didn't know. But you didn't do that. You first go into an arrangement with them.
We didn't do what, Mr. Slade?
You didn't take this step of approaching the DMR to make a submission to the board, to make a prepayment. What you did is, notwithstanding your knowledge of the business rescue, you actually had a meeting with Mr. Ephraim on the 3rd of September. You asked him, let's go supply to Hendrina, please. And that's how the interim arrangement was brokered. So to come in December and say, well, we were uncertain about the outcome of a business rescue, which in the first place did not stand in your way to enter into that interim arrangement, is not persuasive.
You are not persuaded.
No, that's what I'm saying, is not persuasive if you look at where your argument is located from a timing point of view.
Yeah, I don't understand what you are on about.
Okay.
Mr. Slade. I really don't.
When you look at the evidence, one sees this image appearing that your discussion with Mr. Molefe, which leads to the engagement with the DMR, and in turn leads to the submission to the board for the prepayment to be made, was in fact a farce.
Chairperson, I'm under the impression that Mr. Seleke is pursuing his conspiracy theory at all costs. Irrespective of what I say to him, that is the view that he has. And there's no way of changing him. You see, because I'm telling him that we discussed the fact that it's in business rescue. That's an objective factor, business rescue. It was discussed, and the possible outcomes of business rescue. Now, he's trying to read into a risk management discussion, a motive of conspiracy of some kind, which I think is unfair.
So your position is you disagree with
I disagree.
that, and you have made given your response.
I disagree in the strongest possible terms.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair. So this...
We're a few minutes past 1.
Yeah, Chair.
We had hoped to finish before lunch.
Yes.
Of course, it's important to try and deal with matters properly.
Yes.
We should take lunch now, I think. But there was the witness who was supposed to testify today. And I thought that they would be here in the morning, and then they could be told to wait until we are done with Mr. Molefe's evidence. I don't know whether they were here, it's just that I was not made aware. What is the position?
Chairperson gave me a message yesterday, which I communicated, Chair, that we will start with them after lunch. So I gave them an indication to be here by 12. The legal representatives did arrive, and they are here.
No, that's fine. It's just that I wasn't aware
Okay.
that is what has happened.
Okay, sorry.
What is your estimate of how much more time you need with Mr. Molefe? As I say
Yes.
so, we need to strike a balance between
Yes,
doing justice to the issues
Yes.
and trying to finish as soon as possible. We shouldn't, in the attempt to try and finish as soon as possible, not do justice to the issues, but we shouldn't take too long on matters where we can be brief.
yes. So if we start at 2, or no, we taking 5 minutes already of that. Can I aim to finish, Mr. Molefe, you and I at 3? Can we do that? Yeah.
Okay. So let's adjourn and resume at 2:05, and then we go on, and then when we finish with Mr. Molefe's evidence, then I can hear the evidence of the witness was meant to be for today.
Yes.
Okay. We adjourn.